Hello and welcome to the video tutorial on VMware Replication using NovaStor DataCenter software. We'll be creating a VMware Replication job and going over some of the options involved in that job. In our case, we have an environment with two vSphere ESXi servers. One is a 6.5, the other is a 6.7. In our case, we know VMware backups do work in DataCenter software because we've completed a couple of those successfully. And just to note, we're going to be utilizing two optional options inside our replication job. One is change block tracking, and the other is quiescing. Those are recommended options to enable, but not required. Those options, if enabled, do require VMware tools to be installed and up to date in the VMs. So just keep that in mind. So let's get started with the creation of that VMware replication job. In order to do that, we will load up the Data Center Command Server GUI and enter into the nodes management area of the software. So once in the Data Center GUI, we are going to go ahead and navigate over to nodes management here. And once that loads, you're going to look at your VMware proxy server. If you don't already have one, you can go ahead and configure it now just by selecting one of the nodes. Do an edit or double click on it and then go down to VMware proxy here and do a manage proxy from this list. And in our case, we're just showing you that we have our two ESXi servers already added. In your case, you can go ahead and click the add button here and define the DNS or IP address for those vCenter ESXi servers, and then fill in the credentials, the root user, and the password for those servers. Add them one by one, and once you're done, you'll click close. In our case, just to show you here, we have the credentials already filled in. You could also do a test button down below to test your connection before adding it. In our case, we'll cancel out and hit close when done. And when done, click OK again. And so from here, you'll click on Backup Jobs. From Backup Jobs, you'll go ahead and right-click on the empty space and then do a New, and then Virtual Machine, and then a VMware Replication. Once that's loaded, you can go ahead and give it a job name. In our case, we're going to define it as Vmware Replication, and then select the Proxy pull-down menu, and this is where you're gonna pick your node that you added the VMware proxy to. In our case, it's Command Server. Click the button to select the VMs to back up, or sorry, to replicate, and you're going to pick them one by one as to include them in the replication. And when done, click OK. And from here, we're going to cover some of the options. So we have change block tracking enabled and quiesce the VM enabled. Those are by default in the newer versions of Data Center enabled. Change block tracking will allow for block level detection of what changed in the VM since the last time it was backed up, and quiesce the VM is basically telling the VM to prepare it for backup, to make it a safe backup. Target host allows us to select the ESXi vSphere server for our target area to replicate to, for this VM to replicate to. So in our case, we have the two hosts here. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. In our case, we'll pick the first one, and then click OK when done. And then we have the target VM name, which is the by default, it's going to add replication to the end of the VM's original name. In your case, you could change it. It just can't be the original, name of the VM. The data store here is where the replicated VM snapshots are going to be stored to. In our case, we only have one data store. It's data store 1. In your case, you might have more than one there to select from, and that's great because it allows you to maybe even save your VM snapshots to that secondary data store to kind of separate the VM storage versus the replicated storage. Snapshots to keep here is your ability to define how many virtual machine snapshots are kept, and it'll never go above that number there. You do have to have enough disk space on the data store to facilitate that X number of snapshots to be keeping. but the software will allow it to, stop there as to how many it does store. So it does default to 3, and you do have the control to change that. In our case, we know that we have enough room to keep 3 of really any of our VMs that we have selected as backup. But you may want to look at your vSphere ESXi server to see how much free disk space you do have on that particular data store to know how you can set this variable here. But the software will allow you to control how many there are kept. So we're done with that section, and we're going to leave it at 3. And we're going to move down to transport mode. Transport mode is just the ability to select different modes of virtual machine backup that are optimized for certain cases. Hot add is the default, and we're going to leave it at hot add, but there are a couple other virtual machine transport modes there to select from. I'm going to go up to the schedule tab here, and this is your ability to schedule the job. So we're going to pick the schedule pull down menu, and in our case we have daily, hourly, Hyper-V, monthly, weekly, and the ability to create a new schedule or new interval. We're going to pick hourly schedule in our case because we want to do the replication on the hour, maybe every, say, 4 to 8 hours. Click OK when done here, and it's going to add that VMware replication job there. You can right-click on the job and then do a start to start it. And you can see the job name there. Click OK when done to start the job, and then we're going to go monitor it in the monitoring view here. The job just started, and we can see it. It's going to start interfacing with the ESXi vSphere server to look at the data involved there and what changed. In our case, it's going to use that change block tracking feature and the quiescing of the VM to make sure it's safe to back up and start the process. You'll see amount of data transferred here, as well as the time elapsed, the time started, and you should see that amount transferred in a few seconds from now. So that does conclude the video tutorial on VMware replication using NovaStor DataCenter software. Thank you for watching.